In the beginning of February, we received the latest The Isle Devblog, and in there, numerous dinosaur-related topics were discussed, announced, and showcased. 2 weeks ago, I made a full-on analysis of it, so in case you wanna watch it first, feel free to do so. One of the most revealing points in the entire article was the announcement of the very possible introduction of apexes, 2 of them to be specific, in Evrima in the near future. I briefly commented about this before, but I believe this deserves a more detailed and thoughtful discussion because even though this might seem like a big positive on the surface, it has the real potential of being a very bad idea. But first, let's put on the table all the information that we could retrieve from the devblog and the devs themselves. We know that the 2 apexes mentioned by Kissen would very likely be Triceratops and T-Rex. We know that they would be implemented alongside the 7 playables they are planning on releasing in the foreseeable future. They will apparently be more powerful than their legacy counterparts. Yes, more powerful, something that has been confirmed by Kissen herself, and that they won't be initially introduced in official servers, but rather on community ones as a tuggable option. Even though these aspects seem to be a bit too vague to imply any concrete information, the implications present here, alongside with what we know about them in Legacy, show some serious red flags regarding the entire concept of apexes in Evrima at the moment. But what exactly? Animals like Triceratops and T-Rex are part of a category of creatures that are visually and mechanically distinct from the rest of the roster. They are larger, more powerful, and more demanding in both resources and time. We can see this on every game that includes dinosaurs, even ones that don't belong to this genre. Apexes are always categorized as the top of the food chain, the most powerful set of characters in that specific game, and that is by design. These creatures' purpose can vary depending on the entry we are discussing, but in a general sense, they represent an extreme perspective of a playstyle. The tankiest dinosaur, the one that deals the most damage, the most bleed, that has the most armor. They exacerbate the main characteristics of several ways of play and deliver them to the players in exchange for a more demanding experience. After all, there's a reason why this tier of animals is always the slowest to grow and the ones that require the most amount of food, for the most part at least. Those extremes, however, can damage the player ecosystem if done incorrectly despite their premise. These creatures are intentionally made to be a step above the rest of the roster in some regards, yes, but that needs to be balanced with some equally extreme setbacks. Usually those solutions involve making them slower, waste stamina faster, grow slower, or having restricted movement. And while those measures can be enough, that is not always the case, and like I mentioned multiple times or multiple videos, the Isle is a great example of such problem. Apexes in Legacy totally outmatch the vast majority of the roster in stats alone, and the very few exceptions only exist due to the game's non-intentional mechanic loopholes like tail riding. They are vastly superior to any mid-tier in a game, and the server's population prove that every single day. Now, let's imagine for a second that Legacy roster is in Evrima, like in 20 years or so. All dinosaurs are fully implemented, each one with their advertised mechanics, and everything works as intended. But in addition to that, their stats wouldn't change during the transition, which isn't already the case with the current roster, but let's just imagine that for a second. Even in that hypothetical situation, apexes would still be incredibly strong compared to mid-tiers. But the difference here is that there would be a good chance that animals like Rex and Giga wouldn't dominate them as easily. Evrima's movement is more robust and provides players with a lot more maneuverability, and with the addition of the many unique mechanics each dinosaur would have, the majority of the roster would have many tools to deal with that higher tier of creatures, sometimes not even requiring combat. Tail riding wouldn't be the only viable strategy anymore. Omnis could pounce them, Elos could grapple them, Acros could strangle them, Ceros could make them sick, Enkis wouldn't give a fuck. You get the idea. Even if they've remained as strong as they currently are, the mechanical diversity Evrima is planning on delivering, that in and of itself would balance apexes, and the devs seem to know that. It is obvious that they intend to have apex dinosaurs at the top of the food chain, but this confirms that they don't just want them to be the strongest, they want them to be unkillable by mid-tiers. Think about it. Even if their stats remain the exact same, which we already know it's not the case, they would still be a very strong and dangerous animal. The numerous additional mechanics the roster as a whole will inevitably have would only increase gameplay depth and not make them directly weaker, only less one-sided. But they don't want that. At least, they don't seem to want to. They want them to remain as unbeatable, if not even more, in Evrima, otherwise increase their power wouldn't be necessary at all. And this decision has more ramifications than you might think. Remember hypos? Yes, I will keep calling them that. Don't forget that they are planned to be even stronger than apexes. So even if strains come to Evrima being only slightly more powerful than apexes, even just a little bit, meteors would have absolutely no chance of surviving them, either fighting them or fleeing from them. So what does that mean for the rest of the roster? Because if we analyze what the developers are telling us, the power scaling in Evrima is going to be the exact same as it is in Legacy. The only difference is that the numbers are just going to be higher. And that way, the problems will remain unchanged despite the multiple improvements the new branch has. But let's ignore all of that for a moment. Even if they didn't increase their power as they already stated they will, adding them at the time they suggested would still be a mistake, albeit a lesser one. It was mentioned that their plan is to add them between dinosaur releases, more specifically the 7 dinosaurs they intend to release in the foreseeable future. On one hand, they could be added right after the first dinosaur implementation, making Evrima's roster a total of 10, while on the other hand, they could be added only after all 7 are in the new branch, increasing the roster up to 16. So if they follow up with this, we can see apexes in the game when the roster is between 10 to 16 members. There are 2 problems here. Even though 16 is a solid number to start introducing apexes to the mix, going as low as 10 would cause potential harmful consequences within the player's ecosystem. The smaller the roster is, the less variety it can potentially possess since the number is so small, and less variety restricts the interactions between the already implemented species. The Isle divides its roster into different tiers. Dinosaurs are usually made to interact the best with other dinos from the same tier. The power scaling is more controlled within said group, their diets are more tailored to function inside their tier, and their mechanics are, for the most part, made to work better with other creatures of the same category. Small tier predators are better suited to hunt small tier herbivores, mid-tier herbivores can share a nesting ground and defend each other better with other mid-tiers, and so on. Of course, small carnies can still hunt mid-tiers in packs, and mid-tier herbies can nest with apexes, but their gameplay is only fully realized when they interact with members of the same tier, unless an outlier is specifically made to interact with members of the tier that it's not theirs, like Dilos hunting stegos as we saw in the concept art. By having a very small roster, there are fewer possible species inside each individual tier, resulting in a much more restricted set of interactions between players, something that would be emphasized even more with the implementation of apexes this early. Another thing we need to take into consideration are the dinosaurs themselves. Right now, the vast majority of Evrima's playables are small tier, and out of the 7 new ones that are coming, only 3 are mid tiers, and maybe not even that since we know that Diablo is getting downsized and Gali... it's Gali. That means a Rex would only have Cerato, Carno, Stego and maybe Dano as a reasonable food source, and also these would be the only ones being a possible threat to it most of the time. This could go bad either way. Either Rex is too slow and can't efficiently hunt anything, or Rex is too strong and no mid-tier would have a chance to defend itself. Solving these problems is relatively simple. First and foremost, in no way, shape or form should apexes have their power increased. Their stats were already way too good in Legacy, and increasing their power gap between them and mid-tiers would only make the gameplay experience worse for everyone, so that idea needs to go out of the window. Preferably the upcoming 7 dinosaurs could be replaced by others, maybe a few more mid-tiers, but they are already working on these and gameplay development is hard, time consuming and complex, so it's completely understandable that they can't just switch dino priorities like that without dealing anything. Besides, the issue is merely temporary since it would go away over time with the introduction of more dinosaurs into the game, so although the problem can still exist, it will only exist during a certain period of time and eventually be nullified. Apexes are a power fantasy that is important for the player ecosystem just like any other tier, and offer a highly enjoyable and demanded experience. However, due to their sheer power, they can easily unbalance the intended gameplay experience, and just like Kissen said, they need to be extensively tailored, but this is not how we do it. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts down below if you agree or disagree. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you wanna join the ranks, the link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server for memes and pillar nut stuff, and I hope to see you next week.